Thanks, everyone. In the sort of absence of the chair, as vice chair, I'll just take the start of the meeting. I'd like to welcome you all to the Local Development Plan Task Force, and just remind you all that we only have access to this building till 9:30 tonight. Just in terms of meetings, I'm going to open the meeting for September, which was deferred to tonight, so I'm going to open it, tell you that all that the items are for tonight, and then close it. So I've officially presided over the shortest meeting in Thurrock Council's history. I think I managed 5 seconds then.
I'll second that.
Thank you very much, appreciate that. So I'd now like to open the meeting for the 29th of November. And firstly, I look to Democratic Services. Are there any apologies for absence?
No, Councillor Curran, there's no apologies at the moment, but we are still waiting for the Chair, Councillor Redsell. Okay,
thank you. Next item, the minutes of the last meeting. The minutes are found on page 5 to 12 of the agenda. Are there any comments on the accuracy or whatever of the minutes?
No.
Councillor Collins?
I see that I mentioned in the minutes, Councillor Collins requested an item, flood drainage and power, be added to the work programme. Do we have any indication of when that's going to be? Because I didn't see it on this one.
It's on the 24th January meeting, Councillor.
I was hoping it's going to be this one. All right, thank you very much.
No, but I'm pleased to say that the item I asked for was on tonight, so I'm quite pleased with it. Okay, thank you for that. Items of urgent business, unless it's indicated otherwise, I don't think there's been any items of urgent business agreed. No problem. Any declarations of interest? No. In that case, then, I'd like to move to item 5 of the agenda, which is the Thurrock Interim Transport Strategy, which was deferred from the postponed September meeting. So I'll hand over to the officers who will present. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Councillor. So yes, this evening, an opportunity to talk to you and present a brief presentation, slide presentation, to give you an account of where we're at in terms of bringing forward long-term vision for transport for the borough and the refresh of a transport strategy that supports that vision. My colleague Richard Latcham is here as well this evening to talk us through a number of slides on the presentation, but just in terms of an introduction to what we're doing, we have an existing transport strategy in the borough that was adopted back in 2013, runs through to the period 2026, but it's kind of outgrown its date. It needs to be refreshed, it needs to be renewed. It certainly needs to take account of the aspirations for growth that we've got within the borough as we develop our emerging local plan. So what we've got this evening is a presentation that brings together the work that's been done so far on the long-term vision for what needs to be considered, what needs to be applied for long-term transport improvements for the borough across this local plan period and probably even the next. And then we go into a bit of an update in terms of the work that we've done to draft a new transport strategy as well, which is born out of the work that we're doing on the vision. We have got some slides, so Grace, don't feel that is all in control.
Yeah, just tell me when to go
next. So yeah, if you don't mind just flicking through. So really, that's kind of setting the scene as to why the vision and the transport strategy needs to be refreshed and renewed. As I mentioned, you know, there is this need to reflect the growth aspirations in the work that we're doing, and the transport strategy for 2013 to 2026 just needs to be brought up to date in terms of our emerging growth plans and our aspirations for delivering growth through the local plan period. There's also been a number of changes in terms of policy around climate change. There's a climate change piece being presented later on in the agenda. There's also different ways of thinking now in terms of government guidance and the government approach to sustainable travel, active travel, the need to try and change travel behaviours and travel patterns somewhat, and the vision and the strategy identify what needs to be done and how we need to bring forward that approach. so that with the level of growth that we are looking to accommodate, the road network can cope, we can manage our road network, and we can provide additional and alternative modes of travel and options for people we in the borough and businesses in the borough to think about and to use. So some work has already been done. Baseline study that identifies, if that's what it says on the tin, baseline, what the existing situation is within Thurrock. That's also identified what some of the barriers, some of the limitations will be in terms of accommodating growth and what needs to be considered and implemented in terms of improving the transport network. Richard and the wider team have worked on the vision work, and Richard will go through that in more detail in the following slides. And also a scoping report undertaken on the refreshed transport strategy, the work that we've already done, taking what's in the vision and applying that to a transport strategy document. That work has been undertaken. We've got to a point where we've got a draft strategy, and we'll be looking to engage on that further with officers and key teams within the council, and then out to a wider engagement process with lead members and members of the public, and a much wider consultation and engagement process over the coming months. And of course, all of the work that has been brought forward is based and born out of the council's kind of key priorities and vision for people, place and prosperity. And the work that we've undertaken and will be undertaking is kind of focused on the need to identify what our transport network needs to look like in years accommodating local plan growth, how we might need to change the way that certain journeys are made, how people do travel and choose to travel now, but certainly how people will choose to travel and be able to travel in the future. And certainly as we look to accommodate up to 32,000 new homes, that obviously will bring pressure to the transport network. Alternative solutions, opportunities need to be explored. That's what the vision and transport strategy work is bringing about.
And I'm going to take over now, but a very brief introduction. My name's Richard Latcham. I've got about 30 odd years of experience, and that is in civil engineering, transport planning and urban design. I've got 18 slides and probably too much to say, so I'm going to try and choose my words carefully. I'm sure councillors are going to have plenty of questions. So if I try on sort of 20 minutes or so. So what you can see, they're all visual slides, but there's 3 lines on there, and they're hard to see, but it's vision, strategy, and action implementation, and that's the way that we're looking at all this work. So vision is long term and it's very wide. It's bigger than Thurrock, and it's 2050. So it's a 30-year vision, 30 years to a year. That's how far we're looking. Strategy will tie in with the local plan timescales. It's more like 15 to 20 years timescales. And then the implementation action plan, the really important bit, what are we going to do and when are we going to do it? We're imagining they will be 5-year cycles of projects or programs or infrastructure works. We're making progress on all of those pieces, but it's really the vision, the long-term vision, that I'm here to talk to you about today. If you click on, please, Greg. So I'm going to start with the Thames Estuary 2050 vision. It's the wider vision, and I'd like, if you see on those slides, I'd like you to locate Thurrock in there. What I've come from Bristol this morning, but you've got Bristol, Oxford, then you would go up on the east-west curve through Milton Keynes to Cambridge. That's major infrastructure improvements. God's wonderful railway, Great Western Railway, through into London, and that's the first point to make. Is really that as much as this is about the Thames Estuary, it's about southeast England really. And the point I would make on the right-hand side, those diagrams, is as much as Thurrock is located in the inner estuary, the real answer is Thurrock is everywhere in this diagram. Thurrock is the centre of all these pieces that move round. So if you can see the grey highlighted area, just where the cone is, and just hold that in your mind. And Grace, if you could skip through, there's One final slide here this is a call for ideas that the Thames Estuary put out, and you won't be able to see it from here, but maybe in your packs. There's one point to make on here, which was the call for ideas. Somebody came up with the idea of putting a railway line between Essex and Kent. And professionally, I think that's quite a good idea. I didn't put that line in there, but that line's there. So if you could click on, please, Grace. There's that circle. So there's the circle within the Thames Estuary area. And what is the centre of that circle? It could be London Resort, it could be Tilbury 2, it could be Grays, it could be Gravesend. Point in this is that when the Thames Estuary talk about 1 million homes, it's not 1 million homes in Thurrock, but Thurrock has the key to some of these. It unlocks things, it unlocks growth. So this diagram up here is really to say, as much as it's called polycentric growth, lots of places that grow, not just one place that grows. It's about these towns working together and understanding that some of the challenges in Grays are the same or similar challenges as you'll find in Gravesend. So the question is how, over a long period, how can we work together to get the best out of this growth and this investment? And the point here is it's about connectivity and how can we improve the connectivity between these places. Thanks, Grace. This diagram puts Thurrock right in the centre of that growth, and it's about the relationships.
Deepest apologies. Got caught in another meeting. I'm so sorry.
That's all right.
That's right.
Thank you.
That's all right.
Opening it up.
No, no problem.
Cheers. Thank you.
Joy.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, don't.
That's all right. I stay here. It's fine.
We're just up to.
Getting anybody's way in.
Just up to that.
You're a treasure. Thank you. Cheers.
So the question on the left-hand side is where does Thurrock fit this wider growth and regeneration picture, and how are we going to work together with other parties to deliver this growth? Next slide, please. So this is a piece of consultancy advice. It's a vision statement, and in a sense, if you imagine it as a pie, it's made up of 4 parts, and you've got the first 2 parts in the documents with you, which is the statements and the goals. So there are statements about what the aspirations and what the objectives are for this growth and this vision for transport. But there's also 10 goals that set out what we're trying to achieve, and it's very hard to see those in there. I won't run through them all of them, but it's about an accessible, inclusive and a transport network that is fit for all and accessible for all. The other 2 parts of the vision are the strategic focus areas and the Vision 2050 diagram, and I will explain those as we move through. Thanks, Greg. So you can put a vision together. It's not like I'm the only person that is enabled to do visions. We can all have visions, and we can write visions on a back of a postage stamp or on a 1-page document, and you can do that with transport. But the vision here is a vision across strategic focus areas. So what is the vision for regeneration and growth? What is the vision for multimodal and node shift? And if I just work you around, slightly around that diagram, if you imagine it's like a lever arch file, and each one of your folders is like a folder for bus. So what is the vision for bus, and how are we going to get there? Multimodal roads, it sounds perhaps a bit fancy, but really what we're saying, local roads. These local roads, and what are they going to be in the next 30 years? And the answer here is more multimodal. That's what we would like. We would like to add functions to some of these streets, and that's some of the existing streets in the borough, but it's also the streets that do not exist at the moment, the ones that are going to be planned and built. And what do I mean by that? I mean that it has capacity for cars, but it also has capacity for people that want to walk, want to cycle, they want to use the bus. And it's complex, but that's the vision. That's what we're trying to say there. And there is also, even though the council are opposed to Lower Thames Crossing, there is a vision in there for that Lower Thames Crossing and how you minimise the impacts of this scheme and how you maximise the local benefits of that scheme. Next slide, please. And that's the plan basically, and that plan is absolutely going to change. It's hard to see, appreciate from here. You could blow it up to an AO really. It's wider than Thurrock, and it is about scale, vision, and time. It won't just happen in one go. If you could click on, please, Grace, thanks. That's what that diagram, that plan is when you zoom into it. And if I was to pick some of those lines, then those blue lines are the bus routes and the bus stops. That red line is the potential for future mass transit. The yellow is the areas of that's Grays or Lakeside over there. Light grey boxes are existing built form, and the dark grey is future development. So it's a way that we can zoom into particular areas within the borough and unpick this diagram and put it back together, but we can also take whole layers off of the diagram, like bus, like the work Matt and colleagues have been doing with the bus implementation plans, and we can adapt and change those. So it's kind of a tool really. And finally, before we move on, the point really is about driving economic growth and creating and sustaining local jobs. That's why we're doing this. Thanks, Grace. I'm going to flip through this. Not on the slide. The text says preliminary transport appraisal of growth options, and that's a piece of work that we've begun. But if I was just to park for a moment and say, at the moment in Thurrock, you have around 425,000 daily trips. That's what's going on inside the borough. You have about 250,000 cars daily on the borough. And if we say there's new people coming to the borough with the new houses, and if we said there's 1,000 of them, then that could be one train with 8 coaches, or it could be 13 or 14 buses, or it could be 840 cars, or it could be 1,000 bikes, or it could be 500 bikes made for 2. But we have to be realistic.
I'm trying to keep quiet here.
We have to be, well, I'm not far off.
Okay.
But that's the realism with this growth. With the houses come people, and with the need for the people is how are you going to move them around. If you could click on, please, Grace. Right, these I'm going to do one slide a piece now, and these are the strategic focus slides. So this is Lower Thames Crossing. So it's a national scheme, billions of pounds of investment. Does it really unlock local things? No, it doesn't. Does this sub-regional scheme need a sub-regional public transport strategy that's equally as ambitious to it? And my answer would be yes, it does. It's bigger than Thurrock. It's the whole of the Thames Estuary here. If you could click on, please, Grace. So what would it look like? What would an integrated transport strategy coordinated across 3 counties, Kent, Essex and Greater East London, what would it look like? It's hard to see those dots, but right at the far end is Reading. Reading built the platforms for Crossrail, and the Queen opened them in 2012. So this could be Crossrail, or it could be the extensions to Crossrail. You could click on, please. But the point with all of those other growth areas is it's joining up growth. So sub-regional rail is a very big element of this vision because it can deliver an awful lot more growth. It can deliver an awful lot more people in a more sustainable way. This is only one of the ideas here, but Crossrail has got the potential to be extended through to Grays. It has got it's being extended through to Gravesend, and this diagram is connecting them up. Lower Thames Crossing is a 32-metre wide tunnel, third most expensive tunnel ever to be built, I think. And here we're suggesting that a rail crossing could also be there. And that would be connecting on with the existing railway lines. Thanks, Grace. Mass transit. What is a mass rapid transit? Well, it's mass, lots of, rapid, faster than you can get other places, and it's going from A to B areas. So there's 3 diagrams up here. The bottom one is the CERT scheme, the Essex County Council one. The top one, I'm sure you'll be familiar with, is the Kenix. And this one in here is a kind of a hybrid too. Big jump you make in the same way as rail is crossing the river. We must remember that these are 30-year visions, but it's crossing the river is a game changer with public transport. It changes everything. You click on, please, Grace. So this is about river connectivity. It's about using the river and better than we have done. And it feels like this has got real momentum. It's moving. So it's the river itself moving between the sides of the river and along the river, the piers and the bids that we've been successful in. But it's also crossing the river, and there is a big jump. But from left to right, Dartford crossing, HS1, the line with the A on there is the future mass transit. The orange is the rail I've spoken about a moment ago, and the blue is Lower Thames crossing. So that's a belief here, and that's about vision. It's saying that's what we want in the future. We want to be able to cross the river better than we can at the moment. You can click on, please. It doesn't just apply to the Thames. Multimodal roads. So there's quite a lot we could say about multimodal roads, but the bottom line is it's new infrastructure as well as some of the existing infrastructure in the borough. And you won't make out the detail there. It's an AA plan, but all of those dots are potential future projects about how we can deliver growth. If you could click on, please. The bus strategy is moving. The bus strategy could be a way of building towards mass transit, because it's a start, and that's the same as lots of other places have done. So it's the foundations for that public transport. Click on. This is the last slide, little and large. It's about big projects to help people cycle, smaller projects to people to walk and cycle. And it's a piece of work that Matt and his colleagues have just started, walking and cycling improvement plans. And that's it. More than happy to take questions.
Okay, thank you. I do appreciate all the work that goes into it, because I know it's a big thing. I'm glad you brought up the river, because I think we've got to.
Right. We leave that on the screen, because I've got a question I'll be able to say.
I've got quite a few, sorry.
I
Gonna take a bit. Anything else from me? No. I was actually down there today, watching it today, and more container vessels going up there than ever at the moment, and small boats, but not a lot of other shipping. And we've actually wasted 10 years, because we could have had this in place a long time ago, because that's the only way we are going to get cars off because however much we want, or what you've been doing, get cars off the road, it isn't going to happen, because people are not going to go on a bus, and we've no control over the bus companies anyway. I chair the bus user group, so I know what happens with buses, but all lovely, because it is for some people and it's good, but we've got people in Bolton who can't, or Horndon, who can't get a bus anywhere because it stops. So they've moved to an outer countryside and then can't get a bus anywhere. What they've done is they've got older, they can't use their cars anymore, and there's nothing out there for them. So we're not even giving them any way to go forward. No, I'm glad to see the river. I'm glad that's on there, because that I've been pushing that for so long. I've probably got sick to death of myself, to be honest. Lower Thames crossing, it isn't going to do anything for Thurrock. It's just going to cut us in half, and it isn't going to it's going to come to a position on the back of my ward which is going to go straight back to the M25. So it's not going to help Thurrock either side. It's just going to split us down the middle, use the fenland, which we need. So that water's now got to go somewhere, and that's got to find another outlet, and that could be flooding everywhere, you know, because we don't really realise what that fen does, which most councils have found out when they build on fen land, the water's got to go somewhere else. It's got a brain, you know, it says to itself, well, I can't go that way, so I've got to find somewhere else to go. And as your ward is on the river, it matters more to you. You mentioned you mentioned a dark grey bit, but there wasn't a lot of it.
Not on that diagram.
No, and we've got a lot more than that in Thurrock. So I think most people will see we're looking at a whatever. I know we mentioned 32 houses, but it isn't going to happen. You know, it's whether you get the developers to build that amount, and then I think you're just going to clog Thurrock up even more. So we've got roads that are not fit for purpose, like London Road, and you use it all the time, Darren, so you know what London Road's like. Yeah, and sorry, that's gonna that's because I was talking to him today. That's going to matter because that road is over subscribed. You know, it won't last much longer. It'll either cave in with all the tunnels that are underneath it, going out to the sea. You know, so I think I've been around too long, but I think we've got to. I don't know whether cycling out the window. I have never seen anybody cycle, and I travel around the borough every day. Yeah, I never see anybody cycle except the kids. Maybe a few of them going to school. I don't see anybody cycling at all because the roads are too. To be honest, you've got to cross the road on a bike, which is dangerous to me. You know, so cycling. I'm not sure. And is anybody going to go to? I don't know where they're going to go on a bike. Not going to go to Lakeside because why would you go to Lakeside on a bike? If you get stuck, you can't carry it. So I just think it's a bit out of the realms. I think we've really got to look at whether the tram system will help, you know, another system. But I think the river system we've got to use because that will take a big chunk of people where they can ride to London, do their work and then come home. As long as we make the cruise, where the cruise terminal is, the Tilbury Riverside, make that better. You know, I know there's funding in for that. So I'll let other people come in. I'm sorry to have hogged it a little bit. I've probably got other questions, but they've gone on past you. Matthew?
So yeah, just to come in there, I think part and parcel of what the vision and the strategy needs to be is a package of options that need to be, you know, explored, identified, sort of, you know, assessed to identify what package of things might help. So, you know, through the local plan period, 32,000 houses is what's been identified for the growth figure. Clearly, you know, everybody I think understands that the impact on the network will be extremely severe.
Catastrophic.
So it does have to be a case of the vision and the strategy bringing forward, you know, options to be looked at. And there probably is a package of those things that we've spoken about. Cycling and walking improvements, I think, are absolutely fundamental to a transport vision going forward, to give people the opportunity, not for all journeys, but certainly for some journeys. And, you know, I spoke earlier about the need to change travel behaviours so that people do think about certain journeys being undertaken as a short walk to the shops or using the bike to go to whatever destination it might be, rather than what currently happens at the moment is just too readily that people jump in a car, don't they, and use the car as their first go-to option. So an improved walking and cycling network, I think, is fundamental to supporting the growth aspirations for the borough going forward through the plan period. But you're right, it's other big ticket items that are going to be fundamental to this as well. Something along the lines of mass rapid transit is very key. And take the point that, you know, there are certain areas that aren't as accessible as they could or should be for public transport and for other sustainable modes. But the vision is trying to make those links and improvements so that as development comes forward, there is that opportunity to link sustainable public transport opportunities and active travel opportunities to those new developments. Otherwise, you're just going to have the first port of call is always going to be to use the private car to go out for the journeys. and that could have and will have a potentially catastrophic kind of impact on the network. You know, there'll be congestion, and obviously we know, and if we come on to the climate issues later on in the agenda in terms of the impact that increased journeys on our network, you know, HGV and carpool journeys could have on the climate and on the environment. So I think it's a package of options that needs to be looked at. There are a lot of people that walk and cycle in the borough. I see them all the time. So but I am a cyclist, and I, you know, I see them when they're out and about. So what needs to happen is that that part of the network, I think, needs to be enhanced and improved to encourage and give more opportunity to people to feel safe walking and cycling across the borough, and to know that the networks will get them to the destinations they want to get to. That may be part of the problem, is that people don't feel that they can get to certain destinations if they're choosing to walk or cycle. So part of the vision, part of the strategy, and the action implementation plan is to start delivering some of these improvements to support and back up the level of growth.
I do think if we're looking at any big developments that we do, we ought to have some local shops.
Yeah.
Some local things that people can actually buy what they want in, because I think that'll help a lot of the older generation, you know, because they'll be able to go to a shop. I know even with Allsit, you know, that little shop is a goldmine to weigh out, you know, and I know they've just opened one in Bolton as well, which is a community shop, and that's really good. But I think we need that. We need to look at this development, that we need to put something in and somewhere for people to sit, you know, to enjoy where they've just gone. So I think we've also got to look at that. Who else would like to come in? Councillor Kerrin.
Oh, thank you.
I was first.
Oh well.
Sorry.
I've got the ear of the chair.
Yes, got the ear. Sorry, Gary.
Ray was class of that, mate.
Sorry, Gary. It'll be all better when you say it.
Thanks a lot for the work that's gone into this. I find a lot, just a little preamble to where I'm going with this. Firstly, I find all this sort of big picture stuff really fascinating. That you know, when you think of the country being so unlevel, and one reason that London is so dominant is because of its connectivity. You know, and you think, you know, the Central Line is longer than some of the proposed routes between, say, Manchester and Leeds, our friends in the north. And obviously it's a big thing at the moment with rail connectivity. And the reason it's such a political hot potato is because it's so important. So all the stuff I was reading in this report and listening to about, you know, connecting with the north of Kent, looking out to Reading, I think that's the only way we're going to get big economic growth in the area. So I think that's really, really positive. And if we can get our area connected, if we can get the north connected, eventually the country will become more level. So in longer term. However, the only thing I want to talk about, because I think we more or less would probably agree on this about connectivity across the country, but within Thurrock, I still think that's the bit which is missing, because I was looking at the bus strategy and I was thinking of the buses we have and all that, and obviously the chair mentioned my ward, both in terms of it being by the river, but also she also mentioned my ward. In fact, London Road runs through my ward, and then I hand it over to Councillor Watson for her ward. And when you think of roads like that and the sort of the bus service and things like that, I think the vision of everyone cycling and taking sustainable transport around Thurrock could be potentially more than 30 years off, because I know I'm a very much I drive a lot around Thurrock, not because I love driving, but because to get, you know, one of my kids to Hassenbrook and then to Palmer's and then to William Edwards for all the different activities they do, and it's a nice idea, the whole alternative transport. But I think within Thurrock, I think connecting Thurrock with the rest of the country is great, and using the river, but there also needs to be a bit more of a sort of a vision for within Thurrock. And so yes, connect us with Reading and you know North London and North Kent and you know Crossrail, but to improve a lot of daily lives, it's often about getting from Grays to Stamford La Hope. You know, so that's
exactly. I think that's what the strategy will do. There's this longer term, wider ranging vision, and then the strategy will be a more focused kind of. It will give us an ability to focus more locally on the issues such as you've spoken about there, and then the implementation plan is that opportunity to then actually start to deliver some measures, some kind of infrastructure improvements, whatever it might be, to actually start to deliver on what might enable people to travel differently. You know, and I'll go back to some point. Your example is a perfect example, and you know, I'm in exactly the same boat in terms of having to, you know, you have to move around the borough for different reasons, and you can't do it all by walking and cycling. Although, you know, I'm an advocate for that, but clearly you can't do everything in a sustainable way, unfortunately. But I think it's part again of giving the option that maybe some of that could, over time, be the opportunity could be there for some of those journeys to be undertaken in a different way. If there's more confidence, comfort, security around letting your kids maybe go off to do one of these after-school things, like kind of riding their bike there or whatever, or catching the bus, getting the train. If we've got more integrated, better connected kind of services that would allow that to happen. So it's, you know, it's about looking at how we might be able to bring that about.
Yeah, because I definitely think that, so just one point, because I definitely think I totally buy the economic growth argument of connecting Thurrock with the wider world. Let's make North Kent seem as close to, you know, because London isn't all that close together. It seems closer because of the tube and you know, the network. So, but you get economic growth in, but then if someone's living on London Road, they can't get their car out on the road at 5 o'clock at night, you know, because as Councillor Redsell said, you know, it's a road in desperate need of attention, and you know, you're right, all the tunnels that are underneath there, that, you know, connecting the old chalk pits of Chafford as well, isn't it? You know, so that's all I'd say is that yes, economic growth will come as a result of transport, but then what's there for people actually living within Thurrock if you can't get around? I think that's sort of two-pronged approach, really. I think. But thanks for your presentation.
Just before I let you in, Gary, just one thing that I didn't see in here, and correct me if I'm wrong, schools were not mentioned much. I only say that because if we don't start making all schools good, so that people still go, because catchment means nothing today. We've had this argument for quite a time within the council, but if we don't start making catchment area matter again, we're going to stop all that traffic. We're going to pull a lot of traffic off the roads, because I've got residents taking children to 3 schools, as Councillor Kerrin said, 3 schools live in the same road, but you've got to go to 3 schools and get to work. It's an impossibility for some parents. So I think we've got to address that, and I would like this to have been in here. I might have missed it, but
it is in there. But
right,
thank you,
because I think if we address that, then we're going to take a lot of traffic trying to get to, because I know with Blackshot Lane, and because we've got another school going to come in there, we're going to have another traffic implementation there that's going to be catastrophic. It won't for a few years, because it's only taking 3 years in there and then another year afterwards, so it's not going to happen for a little while, but that is going to add another problem. So I think we've got to address those schools, that we've got to start bringing back catchment where children walk to school. If we want children to walk and cycle, we've got to go to the local school, because I think, and you'd pull children out of different schools and they'd be going locally. So I think, sorry Gary, off you go.
Okay.
Shut up now.
If we go to one of these, go back, maybe 4 slides, please, Grace.
Reporter, Gary.
Yeah, do you want a little stick like the teacher has? Yeah?
Yes. I feel like I'm at Open University, module 5. 5 maths. No, again. No pressure, Grace. We're all looking at you.
Both you're doing brilliantly.
Yeah.
Wonderful. No, we want to go back. We want to, I'd like the map of the Thames. Keep going back. Slowly.
Slowly,
Next one.
calm down.
Don't take too much.
Nearly. Next one.
Almost.
Next one. That one don't stop.
Back one.
Back one, please.
Yeah.
There you go. Now we're talking about the Lower Thames crossing. This is the reason why most of us are against it. It's because all you're doing is funneling everything back onto the M25. It's all coming in from different directions. Yeah, it's got another crossing here. Then you get onto the M25, it's the same rotten road.
That's right.
And the whole point is, a lot of the traffic that goes on it goes to East Anglia, that way. An awful lot of it. Now, this is Canvey Island. Bless it. King Canute, well, whatever. Anyway, we've had,
should have been there.
At Thames Farm roundabout, we've got the A130 that takes us up to connect with the
Ideal road.
A13, the A127, the A12, which then leads all the major traffic off to East Anglia. The crossing should be running past, not through Canby Island. For all the people I know who live on Canby Island, no, to the side and join up with Sadler's Farm roundabout. It should be built there. Then we'll take all the congestion away from the M25.
Yeah.
That's what this crossing here is a disaster in the making. It should have been built there. And all these Sadler's Farm roundabout, the roads there were upgraded in order to facilitate the original crossing. That's what we need, Richard.
Well, that leads to the M11.
Exactly.
You know, you don't need to go from Thurrock to get back on the M25 because most people are going to, if they've got to go up to the Manaway and come back again, what a stupid thing. Or they've got to go down to Tilbury, turn round and come back. No, they're going to go straight to the Lakeside turn off and get on the M25, or they're going to go through Brentwood.
Richard, make this your idea, my son. Own it. It is yours. Wear it.
I'll take it away.
Just don't want it.
So to be honest, if you look at this, that's going to come later on in the agenda.
Yeah.
What Councillor Collins just said, you put us in a triangle of this. So we've got the Lower Thames crossing with the A13 and the M25. And there's Thurrock, sat in a crossing of pollution.
It's going to be
It's
that's what they do. Yeah.
But this will probably, you will need to redo in order for us to have a longer life expectancy of about 70.
The trouble is, it's affected people's lives because it's gone. Oh, we put it that way. We put it that way. So it's affected people in housing who now can't move because they can't because of the threat. So it's affected many lives. This
It is an act of vandalism. Seriously.
Yeah, it is.
It's travelling across.
Yeah.
Fenland, which is basically the spud of the blotting paper, all the rain that falls in our part of Thurrock.
Goes there.
Goes through.
And even that floods at times.
You're going to flood a village. Ulset will be the next one to go because
All
that's
we're
the
doing
sort of thing.
is saving that problem for ourselves. There's also got to be a proper water management system, which I'm finding out about, hopefully tomorrow, maybe Wednesday, which says like if you've got 1,000 square metres and you've got more than 10 homes on it, you've got to contain all the water that fills on the area and let it out slowly. Have you heard that?
I have.
Right, okay then. So that's one other thing. No one's mentioned it, seems to be mentioning or planning it. So we're going to be pushing that. I will be anyway.
I think Gary's got a good point because reservoirs, we've not built a reservoir anywhere in Thurrock, but we need it. You know, you have to channel that water somewhere.
Or
You know?
or contain it or store it.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, good.
Also, we're talking about producing wealth. All right. So it's all very. What's this wealth? Where is it going to come from? Yeah. I mean, I'm from the Barter Estate. We used to make shoes. Barter. Remember the Barter Shoe Company? Barter Estate. And you do other things. Places in the country like Clarkville, Clark Shoes. What was it? Port Sunlight for Unilever. Yeah. Well, if we want to reduce people from travelling and sort of tanking all the way into London and what have you, we should be making use of whatever brownfield sites we have in Thurrock, and not just building houses, but building places for people to work in. When we had the Basildon New Town Development, for example, we got loads of companies to move there. We don't want just box filling jobs. They want proper, technical, well-paid jobs. That's what we're after. And that's what we want here. So instead of people having to commute 20, 30 miles to work, they're on the doorstep. And there's nothing in that in the plan. And I actually mentioned that. It's actually there. It's actually there in the notes. All right? So I'll leave it with you. If you want to have a chat with me afterwards, I've got out or by email. Happy to give you my contribution for what it's worth. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you.
I think he's talking to the converted, really. I don't know who was first. Councillor Watson. Councillor Anderson. Thank you.
I'm going to bring something up that has already briefly been touched on and has been brought up a lot in previous meetings, and that is this issue of changing people's behaviour from cars to cycling. Now, as we've seen in previous meetings, I think there's just a difference of opinion here. I just don't see people moving to cycling and walking in the numbers that I think maybe you'd hope. But that's, that's just a difference in that, and that's fine. My question is, how flexible is this plan? Because it's a really long-term plan until 2050. So if we get 10, 15 years down the road, and we're really going after this cycle and walking routes and way of transporting people, and we talk about changing behaviour, and we notice behaviour just isn't changing as much as some people may like it to. If that behaviour doesn't change, and people still driving in their cars because no matter how big your legs are, you're not going to cycle faster than a car. You're not going to want to be cycling in poor weather, which is half the year.
In the smoke.
If we see that this behaviour isn't changing, what scope is there within this long-term plan to say, okay, look, we may have over-egged the cycling and walking thing here, and sort of change course a bit?
Can I just before, why is it a 50-year plan? Because most of us sitting around this table and we won't be here.
It's 2050, isn't it?
30-year plan.
50.
I mean, I'll be retired by the
years.
time it comes in.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So
There are loads of really good questions.
Yeah.
First off, this is a vision, not a plan.
no.
But there is vision, strategy, action, implementation,
Mm.
and the strategy is the bit I think you're talking about, Councillor. It's the next 15 to 20 years. I don't know the borough anywhere near as well as all of you do, but I like this place.
We'll take you round.
Yeah, please do. I'll take you around to the old borough.
When I walked up Chapel 100 this afternoon, and I came out of the station and I walked up towards the Premier Inn, lovely place to stay the night. The infrastructure isn't designed for anything other than cars, and you got to that roundabout and it was all queuing. Everyone was queuing. There were queues all around it. So I think the simple answer to part of your question is there's brand new places to make and brand new roads to build. Those are different than the remaking the existing road. So behaviour change is one thing, but if I just talked about infrastructure, that there are bits you can do with the existing infrastructure on that road, but the road is the road now, and the houses front it, you've got street lighting on it, the cycleway that's shared on the footpath just stops because there ain't any more space there. So there's not a lot on that particular corridor that you can do. It's not about changing behaviour, it's about the infrastructure. There's nothing there for those people. So that's a challenge, but there are other places in the borough where I think we might be able to do things, but you don't do it by taking stuff away from people. You don't do it by taking away capacity for cars and putting a cycle lane in. That's not the approach. You need to do it in a positive way. You need to add things, not take things away from people. I'm not going to give you any illusions. That's really challenging, and in some cases, it's probably not possible in the time it takes, because you're not going to take people's front gardens away, put stuff in there. The road, the corridor is the corridor. That's the space you've got. The real challenge with this, though, is with it, whether it's 30,000 houses to 2050 in the vision, or whether it's more than that. It's all of those new communities that we do want to have. There's clever words, compact and stuff, but basically we want to give people the infrastructure and the choice. It's not about being anti-car, but it's about being realistic, that if there's 250,000 cars in Thurrock at the moment, every 10,000 people a day that we encourage on a bike is 10,000 cars less on the roads. You could almost argue from a political point of view, we actually want to make it better for local residents to move around, not worse. And that seems like an impossible challenge, and it is a challenge, but the challenge begins with these new communities, allowing them to be able to walk and cycle.
I mean, that way you mentioned of Trafford 100 was probably the wrong place for you to get off and come in, because Councillor Kerrin's probably got more housing than Trafford 100 has, and he's probably more dense than anyone anywhere.
Are you around at all tomorrow, Richard?
Yeah, we'll be.
You want me to take you around to some of the places you should see?
I think it'd be good to visit some. I think when Trafford 100 was first built, it was built very well when it first started near Hog Lane. It was built quite strategically. It was built better, and then as it got on further, it started to dense in, and then you've got things like in refuse trucks can't get down some of the roads because they're so small, and that's what's happened to one of the developments I've got in my ward, where it's just built wrong. You know, it's built on, so Trafford 100 is probably a wrong move because there's only one road in when you get to that roundabout. There's only one road into Lakeside, and that's why you get the comeback on it.
Sorry, Chair.
I just
come back
wanted
in,
to
Johnson.
come back
Yeah,
on
please.
on that. It sounds to me as though what you're saying is, in terms of the cycling and the walking, primarily we'd be looking at doing that in these new areas. And if that's the case, then it just goes back to something the Chair said earlier, that the development needs to be right. There needs to be local shops, amenities, doctors, surgeries in these places. If you want people to cycle and walk, you can't just have vast dormitory suburbs or areas where you've just got houses, because people will not walk or cycle. So I think the development really needs to be spot on.
I think, you know, you mentioned it's planning and making, isn't it? It's making sure that those facilities are there, thought out, delivered properly. The facilities, the employment opportunities, you know, so that
There aren't any opportunities in this plan.
No.
But well, within the plan, Sean and colleagues will probably come onto that in more detail. But you know, it's accommodating and the figure for housing, but also the figure for employment, isn't it? Within the borough over the local plan period, and how that will link in terms of locations for houses, locations for employment growth, and then how we do move people to those opportunities, you know, in and out of their dwellings, and then to hopefully potentially job opportunities. But certainly, you know, the place needs to be right, doesn't it, for people to be able to, if you're just going out for a pint of milk and a loaf of bread, don't jump in the car to do it if the facilities are there and the shop is there for you to be able to maybe consider a different way of getting there. So it is about place making and planning, and that's what the local plan process is about. The transport strategy is a part of that, to ensure that transport improvements are brought along as we consider the growth aspirations as well.
Thank you. Councillor Watson.
Oh, thank you.
That's all right.
Thank you ever so much for your presentation. I'm probably one of the my ward is Purfleet on West Thurrock and Estuary, so I've got a massive ward, and it's not just industrial either. So in Purfleet we have got at the moment first phase 3,000 homes being built, and then really if you look at Purfleet itself, you can take them around and show them the new.
I'm not sure my anymore.
Just show them, right? So the Purfleet, so it's also like quite small roads around there as well. Bearing in mind where you also need to think about is where my ward and Ockenden ward and especially Avey ward sit is right next to the M25. So on a normal average day, people getting home, it's chaos. If there's an accident, which happens probably about 4 or 5 times a week, it's a standstill and you're not going to go anywhere. So I think for me, I'm very much in Council Redstill's camp at the moment about really using that river really quickly, because it is a quick win as well. Whether we like it or not sitting around this table, London is moving, and whether we like the riverfront, it's moving up from the riverfront. So already we know Barking-Dagenham's got the 3 big markets going to be sucking Barking Riverside. It's not long before those people already highlighting the fact that there's cheaper houses out here than anywhere else. So they will start coming up here, which is fine, but we need the infrastructure to deal with that. We don't need the lower Thames crossing. I don't see the point of it apart just putting a Woolwich ferry there if they want to get from like Tilbury Port to Gravesend. Just do that, like they've got a ferry down there now. We just do not need that. Council Collins right, move it up to Canvey Island. What's that A road? The A12?
A130.
Yeah, that was
A130.
built. The A130 was built
It's a lovely
to
road.
take those HGVs and all those heavy equipment. Not any of our roads.
That was the 4th option, and that was got rid of, because this is an easier option.
And it's also about cost. The river like width is slimmer here than it is going up to Canvey, which means it costs them less money to do the build. But
it's not though.
But I'm for this. Move it up. It's not a cost thing.
It's not costing us.
The the railway crossing extension, I mean, like, I've looked at the thing, so North Ockenden gets a railway line. Isn't that in Havering? It borders Havering. So what, I'm just trying to think, what is the better purpose of that for us, apart from connectivity maybe from Upminster? So I'm just trying to work out that if you're going to do anything, I think you need to use them as a quick win. Use the rivers really, really quickly. Start.
I've been fighting it for 10 years. I think it's
in planning conditions. Start putting in about changing behaviour on things like bicycles and walking more. In developments, instead of having haddock developments coming into planning with 10 here, 5 there, if we're going to have a proper development, let's see proper economic growth within that development with shops and local run produce. You know, let that happen. And once that starts happening and you start having friendly neighbourhoods that are living green and code 4s, then you will actually get people that will want to start doing all the cycling, will want to start doing the walking, will take pride. We've got another agenda item on designated green spaces coming up because we're so frightened, a lot of us, that they're going to start building on areas that we love so much. And out of all of that, flooding here, as we have seen this year,
it's going to get worse.
Though it's unprecedented, it's unprecedented. They're saying now, if you start building on this and the Thames go, you might as well just all put us into barges than build houses, because it's going to be a recurring thing. And that's what I've said to the contractors down in Purfleet. I want to see your flood strategy. I want to see how that's working with the council's flood strategy. Because without that, that's instrumental now into any development within Thurrock. If what's happening in Stamford Hope and down in Purfleet, places like that's going to happen everywhere. It's Balfour, Allset, that we're putting like a solar farm sitting on a fence in Balfour now. You know, so we just need all of these things, and that should be built in with all your infrastructure. So you've only look at me.
Solar farm. Solar farm, yeah. You lost us at solar farm, sorry.
I didn't.
I'm going to let Councillor Tandy come in, because otherwise we're taking too long with this. And
right, okay, so
no,
basically everything you
fine.
said is right. The way to make people come off the street, the kids and all that, is affordability. So now, like obviously electric cars coming on board, kids can't afford it, even adults, it's too expensive. Hopefully the government will look at that and say, you know what, 20 years, kids can't afford it. You can go and buy a second-hand car, £500. Kids on the street, driving the car, you don't want to walk. So it's in government's hand as well, because I don't know what year they're going to they're going to stop selling diesel, petrol, I think is it 2030, 40 or something. So that's another way, if they can make the future, which is going to be electric, if kids can afford it. So that's another way, you know, you'll have less people on cars. Like I think Alex said as well, every household, kids can't afford to buy a house. So what do they want? They want to get another car. So one house, 2 cars, 3 cars. And that's other pollution wise, it ain't going to go. Cars ain't going to go down. We're gonna have, that's the thing. I think we're the 4th highest in the country for air pollution, and obviously you're going to go ahead with that as well. I don't know how you're going to solve that problem.
Most of the pollution comes from outside the borough.
Does it?
Yeah.
Gravesend as well. Right.
London.
So we're going to affordability. To make, I believe, if you want a child, younger generation, because at the end of the day, this is all right. We're not saying young or old. It's all about the younger generation, how they want to go different places. If a child was in Little Thurrock, why would he want to go to Stamford? No offence to Stamford. What is there to see in Stamford?
What if you have an attitude like that?
You need something for kids now. Where do they want to go? Where do they want to go? Lakeside. That's it.
A small board.
Is it here?
We're setting models.
Or if someone's walking or someone's on a bike, all I ever hear is they've gone Tilbury Fall.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's open space, greenery, you can walk the dog and all that, but I mean, even the Tilbury Fall, no one's really taking ownership of that now. I've heard no one wants to take responsibility, it's just overgrowing there as well. So that is where you're trying to get people, it's all about the younger generation. They're going to change the way we live. You know, we're going to get older and older. They're the ones. And that's what we got to look at. Something for the children, for the younger generation to go to different areas in this borough. You know what? This weekend I want to go there. This weekend I want to go there, because there's something for the younger generation.
Yeah.
And that's what we need as well. It's all right building these houses. What's the point? And also safety. I've got 2 young daughters, 18, 17. Do they really want to walk to a mile or 2? They're too scared. What's it going to be like in 10, 15, 20 years, or even 5 years' time? So as soon as they get older, it's like, get a car, a couple of years' time, my older one, she's going to jump in the car, borrow a second-hand car, safer in the car. We've got to change that as well. So there's a lot, but just looking at the youngsters, how we can change, how make them want to stay in this borough, go to different places.
I think you've got it right. We have to do something in Thurrock, because what we've got now is we've got London moving here, and us moving on. Up north end, because we're going up north because it's quieter. As Councillor Watson said, they've got markets, they've got their own produce, you know, and that's something we don't really do. I can only think of Barleylands, that's anything that sells things like that, but we don't do anything locally to make people want to go. They've got things on the motorway now where you can go and buy fresh meat, and you know, but we don't do anything like that. We don't look at what you can go to. You know, it doesn't always have to be about, I don't know, going to somewhere. You have to make the kids want to get outside, and that's why we need a good sports strategy. We need that sporting venue to make people want to do sport, you know, and hopefully it'll come through sooner than later.
I've got 2 councillors there who I would be very excited about what they're going to build in your 2 wards with Purfleet and the Riverside. From looking at these pictures, it's going to be outstanding.
Yeah, well, you've got Regeneration, haven't you, in Purfleet?
That's what you want. You like even with having Lakeside just being done up. Kids like even the Lakeside. Have you seen what they've done about the Winter Wonderland? How they've created it. And my daughters were saying to me yesterday that we don't need to go to London now.
No.
We can go Lakeside and do this Winter Wonderland where they've done all the wheel and everything.
Yeah.
So it's trying to bring things closer, and you're right. It's there. The two wards in your wards, opportunities there to make it. You know what?
Well, I've always said that river is a main. We should be looking at that.
We don't use it enough.
No, if you sit at Tilbury, and I'd advise people to go down to Tilbury Riverside and have a look at what Gravesend have done. And then they must look over here and think, what a state, because we've done nothing.
We don't use it.
No, we haven't used it at all. And we could. We did do a good flatty development a bit further down, but we've done.
Happen with your 2 wards.
Yeah.
They should.
Can I just ask one question?
Yeah, I've got to push it on though. Sorry.
How quick would it to get something going on the river? What do you need to do?
It's already there, isn't it?
In order to start it and move it up, because you've got Uber buses now and everything on the river, but.
But I'm not sure I'm the right person to ask that, because I know a lot has been moving within the council.
It is.
But I haven't got my finger on the pulse of where it is.
I think there's maybe a specific question that could be brought to the Regeneration team, because they're the guys that are leading the work at Grays with the potential of a jetty, the work at Tilbury with the potential of a jetty, and how that might link with a riverborne kind of provision, some kind of river taxi or whatever it might be. But it certainly links in with the aspirations that the guys have got through, the Towns Fund, isn't it, for Tilbury Town and Grays Town. It links into that. Difficult question to answer in terms of how long is all of that going to take. But the Regen team, I think, are a bit closer to that to maybe be able to.
Trouble is, the Riverside, Tilbury Riverside, has to be renewed. It's been there for hundreds of years, and you know, you're always afraid that one day you're going to pull up down there and what's going to go give way, you know, underneath you, because you never know.
None of it short term, is it? I mean,
no.
So
but I think you're right. We have to move that on. Perhaps a question to full council is good for that, because we need to move that on as quickly as possible, because I think that's going to take a lot of traffic. But as you say, I think they've got funding to do the Tilbury Riverside, haven't they? But I think there also still needs to be a bit there where you can watch the river, because what we've done along the river is we've shut it off. and you can't really see the river because of obviously we've got to have the right things on the river, sort of to stop the flooding.
Yeah.
So, but I think we've just shut the river off. I'm sure Councillor Kerrin remembers we've actually more than ever shut it off. So you can't really walk along the river because you're stopped at a certain place. So Councillor Kerrin's going to come in, then we're going to
I just
move
wonder
on.
if going forward we could come back to this at a certain point. Maybe, I don't know whether a year, 6 months, and maybe because this item has made me sort of really realise why we put this task force together, so we could actually go into detail on certain things, and because we all know what the PTR agenda can be like with you, chair of that committee. So I wonder if we could come back at some point, if chair could liaise with Democratic Services, and because I think this has been a fantastic item to discuss and to talk about, because and maybe because I'm beginning to see parallels with some of the discussion, like I mentioned earlier, that's happening in like the north of the country in terms of connecting and stuff. Because I find that stuff really interesting, and I just wonder if we could do that and bring it back.
I would
here.
say 6 months.
Maybe like it'll be a new,
year.
maybe like be a new municipal year, and start off fresh with this again, and invite you down again and really sort of go into the nitty gritty of it, because I think it's almost like we could go on for another couple of hours about it. I still don't think we've done it justice with what we could be,
And it isn't all negativity.
No.
There might be some things that we really are passionate about and we don't agree with, but it isn't, as Matt said, you can, things pulling together, but the river is the main thing that we should get going now, because we need that to pull, if we want to do anything to stop climate change, that's one big thing we could do, And
I think that there is an opportunity to do that, as the vision and the strategy are developed, the draft of the strategy is something that we need to do that internal piece of work on, and then go out to a wider engagement with members, specific committees and groups, and then go out to a wider engagement with the general public. So at some point there, once we've kind of got this draft strategy and a vision kind of at a point where we can share it and engage, and have some meaningful input on a written version of the document.
South Essex and North
back
Kent linking with the rest of the country, isn't it?
Come back and maybe pull that apart in a more detailed.
Even if it's just one item, just to just let's get
I think
right into it.
It wouldn't hurt to. Is it possible, Grace, to take this couple to cabinet? Just take the little bits of questions that we've actually asking, so they know we're actually doing our job here. Because it's a bit like an overview and scrutiny. If we don't scrutinise it, it isn't going to happen. So I think it would be some pointers that we've brought up tonight. That's Grace. We just do.
I think it will go back to the parent committee of Planning, Transport, Regen. That's where we'll go back to.
I've just asked the chair if we.
I'm not sure we can add items to the PTR work plan here and now, but just for your info, Matt, I think it would be really good if we actually had a report, a specific report on river travel and what was discussed tonight at PTR. I think we've got one left taken out next week. We've got one left in February. So obviously that's a discussion I can have with you outside of Democratic Services, but that's something that
I could come to that though, Alex, couldn't I?
You can come along.
Yeah, that's what I mean. If we bring up the pointers that we've actually, because we've all brought some good things up. We've all brought some good things up, and I think that you don't want me there.
His clicker next time, his laser pen to point at his presentation.
Not having her there.
So Grace, can I just ask you to remind Councillor Anderson at his meeting next week to put that on the agenda item?
Councillor Anderson won't need reminding.
Just in case. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I do appreciate what you've done.
Thank you.
We really do, because we know there's some good things there.
Good piece of work.
Just need to bring a lot of it together, because what we don't want is a talking shop again and nothing ever comes to fruition. I don't like them, We need something to happen. Actually see something go forward. Definitely.
How long is your consultation with this? How long do you stay on board with this project?
Me personally, well, I like this sport, so I'll carry on.
Depends how long the funding lasts.
Yes.
Yeah.
20, 30 years.
Yeah, as soon as we stop your wages, you're gone, aren't you? Okay, are you going to stay with us? Because you're
Okay.
You've got
We're
other
gonna
bits,
just hear
don't
if
you?
that's all right.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
Which has got
It's fine.
bits to proceed, so,
Contact number. Tuesday, I've got a couple of doctor's appointments, so, yeah, thanks. Would Wednesday, are you around Wednesday? Wednesday I would have
No,
more
but
time.
we'll all go another time. I'm back next week. So
I think it
I'll
might
be at work next week.
Well,
Sorry, I think it'd be really useful if you can just send the details to all of us.
Yeah.
Of you and
yeah.
so if you're down again and we're free or whatever, we
That'd
just
be
can
great.
tell you if you want to visit each other, that'd be
Yeah,
great.
thank
We won't take you to Trafford 100 though.
Bridget,
No, I've
Seen that already.
I'll do it Tuesday. I'll
North
do a couple of
Stifford.
hours, I'll be-
Really nice.
Thanks.
Yeah.
That I'm not sure about. I've got to see the doctors in the
Yeah.
morning. I've got,
Okay, can I pull this forward because we have to move, we've got to be out of here at 9:30, so.
Thank you.
You want thanks?
Thank
Yes,
you.
of course I am, yeah. Thank you once
Thanks
again.
very much. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
lovely.
you.
Okay, we're on item 6, local green space guidance, page 69.
It's Irina Davis, that's going to be presented.
Okay.
Did you want to go ahead, Irina?
Thank you very much, Grace. I hope you can hear me, and also I hope you can see my slides to some
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Irina Davis and I'm Principal Planning Officer, and today I will briefly introduce several highlights from the guidance document. So what are the aims of the designated local green space guidance document? It's to set out the Council's intended approach to identifying, assessing and designating sites as LGS across the borough as part of the evidence base in forming the new local plan. The second aim is to outline the national and local policy position, to set out the criteria and step-by-step process for local green space designation, to develop consistent guidance and advice to LGS as proponents what information and evidence required, and finally to provide additional support in identifying, evidencing and proposing local green spaces for designation to help shape a consistent approach. So what does a national policy say about this? Local green space designation was introduced in the National Planning Policy Framework in March 2012, now currently updated in July 2021. Paragraphs 101 to 103 introduce the local green space designation to protect local green areas of special importance to local communities. This designation should be consistent with wider planning policy for an area, including the provision of new homes and employment opportunities, and it should not be seen as means to stop wider development needs. So in essence, this introduction enables community, in particular circumstances, to identify and protect areas that are of value to them through local and neighborhood plans. If a space is formally designated as a local green space in the local plan, it would effectively give that space the same protection from development as a greenbelt site. Moving forward. What are the particular circumstances that qualify a piece of land for local green space designation protection? So in essence, to qualify as a LGS, a site should fall within the criteria set out in National Planning Framework and further detailed in the planning policy guidance. Now, these criteria provide guidance which should then be interpreted at a local level. The interpretation of this criteria is detailed on this slide and will be used to create a site assessment form, which has been created in draft, that the site promoters will need to submit. Successfully satisfying all 5 criteria does not, however, guarantee local green spaces designation, as the site may already be sufficiently protected by existing designation. So you can see that NPPF states that the local green space designation should only be used where the green space is reasonably close proximity the community serves, demonstrably special to a local community, and holds a particular local significance. For example, because of its beauty, historic significance, recreational value, and etc. Therefore, it is important to note that the bar for local green space designation is set at a very high level, and it is clear from the national policy that local green space designation should be the exception rather than the rule. So on the slide, we can see the previously mentioned criteria for assessing a local green space as interpreted from the national policy framework. So criterion 1 is the land is not subject of a planning permission for development. The space is not allocated or proposed for development in the local or neighborhood plan. Criterion 3 states that the space is not an extensive tract of land and is local in character, followed by the space is within close proximity of the community it serves, and finally the space is demonstrably special to the local community and holds particular local significance. So in this regard, the Council will consider any evidence submitted against the sub-criteria and will come to a judgment as to whether or not to propose a site as local green space, giving clear reasons as to why. So on the slide, I'll briefly highlight methodology and how the Council will undertake the work. So step 1 is the consultation with stakeholders groups as part of the local plan process, issues and options, stage 1 and 2. These stages already have taken place. So between February and April 2016, the Council consulted formally on local plan issues and options. And this consultation only generated 34 responses. The Council reopened the nomination process as part of local plan issues and options stage 2 consultation in December 2018. This consultation generated several responses with very limited supporting evidence provided. So it's also would like to note here that the government has not set out a standard methodology or template for the process of designating site as local green spaces, and therefore the designation methodology is proposed after reviewing other local authorities' example and in accordance with the latest MPPF and PPG. Moving forward, just bear with me, please. So, step 2. Step 2 is involves identifying possible. Step 2 involves identifying possible sites for local green space designation using the variety of sources of information. So you can see here the examples.
Irina,
We've all read this.
can you hear me?
Yes.
It's the chair, Councillor Redstall.
Yes.
It's lovely to listen to all this, but sometimes I think we waste a lot of time. We can read, and we read all this through. If we're anything, we do read what you send us. Okay. So I think it's not that we don't want to listen to you. It's just that probably I'd rather spend time on questions than I would just going through all this. So if you don't mind, and you, Grace, I'd rather move on to questions if you don't mind, because we can go page by page anyway. And if we can ask the questions, I'd rather that than, it's a bit like having things that are noted, they're no good. We need to move on and ask questions. So if you don't mind, Irina.
Absolutely.
I'd like to move on so people can ask you questions on this.
Sure.
Because we do take the trouble to read what you send us. If we're any councillors at all, we should read it. Okay. Okay, who'd like to go first? Councillor Collins, so let him in.
Thank you very much, Irene.
You're welcome.
Hello. On page 71, which is page 3 of your report, you said designating land as green space should be consistent with local planning of sustainable development. What is your definition of sustainable development, please?
Did you hear that, Rena?
No, I'm sorry, I cannot hear the question. Apologies for that. Something to do with the definition.
Okay, on page 3 of your report, you put down designating land as local green space should be consistent with the local planning of sustainable development. What is your definition of sustainable development, please?
Sustainable development is use of natural resources without compromising the needs of the future generation.
I see. So, what is local green space development actually doing that the green belt isn't doing, please?
So there is certain, okay, just bear with me. So certain green spaces allocated for particular reasons, and local green space designation mostly focusing on what is a particular significance for local community. So, and therefore there are these criteria that need to be tested against to ensure that this is addressed.
Sure.
Could I just follow up then? Does that mean then that this relates to land outside of the green belt? So effectively we're asking for a piece of area outside of the green belt to be classed as
in essence,
green space. Okay, thank you.
Patches of
Gary, can we just bring Sean in, because it wants to come in? Can I just bring you in, Sean? Thank you, Irina.
Yeah, sorry. I think you probably now just answered your own question. I mean, this is really targeted at green space within the urban area, particularly where there's a scarcity of green space to meet local needs. It's an opportunity for the council to sort of give them further protection. So we wouldn't not normally be looking at sites outside the urban area for designation, because, as you say, Greenbelt confers a significant degree of protection.
Okay, Gary?
All right.
Answer your question for now.
Okay,
Councillor Kerrin.
Thank you, Irina and Sean and team. I'm really pleased this item has come up, because you'll probably be aware through sort of some of the things I've said that I'm particularly interested in local green space designation. I've requested it for a particular tract of land in my own ward of Parker Road, the Parker Road Park. I asked the portfolio holder on Wednesday at full council about it, and in principle he supports green space designation. So what I'm really asking is what's the next steps in terms of sort of officer involvement in so a piece of land has been identified. It's particularly loved by the community. As ward councillors myself, Councillor Apothecary and Councillor Fish, put in a request for it, and we've sort of seen sort of cross-party agreement really on a particular piece of land. So what could you just outline really sort of next steps and what officer support we could have for trying to get this sort of this idea moved on?
Thank you very much for this question. I'm going to start, and I'll let Sean maybe to follow up to add anything to that. So the purpose of the guidance is to give and streamline the methodology and outline step-by-step process, because in the past it was clear that there was a lack a bit of a consistency, a guidance that resulted in submissions lacking evidence on the basis of which some objective judgments could be made about the suitability of the sites, as we just discussed. In this regard, the first step was to develop guidance, highlight the procedure, set out the criteria, how we're going to approach that, and also formulate, after this methodology, in appendix you can see the submission form, which also includes some guidance question to navigate the proponents of the site, what exactly we're looking for to find, and what evidence, whether it's attached or not. Now that will in essence that will be disseminated to, as far as I understand, and Sean might correct me, to anyone interested in that, but also there will be a call for sites seeking for sites that available online as well, where we will seek further engagement and inconsistent way to collect these sites. You can see through steps 4, 5 and 6 during local plan regulation 18, 19, but eventually there will be an assessment report prepared as another evidence based to accompany local plan as to the judgment and how a site's been assessed and then designated. Sean, I'll give way to Sean.
Thank you, Rowena. Thanks, Sean.
Yeah, I think so. Like what we'd like to do is in January is just start consultation to get the community to submit further submissions and really clean up and consolidate on what we've had before. And we've run that through January, February, and then from that we would then start to do the assessment work. And when we've sort of had some time to think about the submissions, we would then obviously reach out to the community and look to see how we could support them.
Yeah. So thanks for that, because you know, I'm very well aware that sort of site. I know other ward councillors will talk about sites particular to their ward, but just being very specific at the moment about sort of Parker Road. Now that sort of as ward councillors with our residents, we've identified the site and sort of worked to sort of you know, to get sort of portfolio holders on board and everything. So is it really from January onwards, or from now, I suppose, what sort of in the way can sort of ward councillors and residents expect of sort of officer support in helping to put the sort of I don't know if bid is the right word, but if we can, what sort of officer support can we have in terms of being able to put these bids and suggestions forward, so that come January, February, when the consultation happens, you know, any piece of land identified, and in particular Parker Road, in my case, has the best chance of getting through the local plan process?
I mean, I think tonight is probably the first time that we've heard the criteria with anybody. So, you know, if the group are happy with the general approach, we are happy to meet with community representatives as soon as it's convenient. And as I say, we will sort of try and set out the sort of information that they need in more detail, respective their the green space that they want to see designated, and then we'll do what we can in terms of helping them pull together that evidence. And some of it will be reliant upon work that we've already commissioned for the local plan or are due to commission over the next few months. And then we will take it forward through the summer and look at which sites need to be designated and allocate it within the local plan. Some sites may make it, others may not. But then obviously Reg 18 consultation next year, back end of next year, that will be the opportunity for the community and members and others to come and provide us with formal feedback, and we can look again at things if that's necessary.
Thanks, Sean. If Councillor Kevin has brought up Pacific, I'm probably classed as one of the lucky ones because I have 56 acres of Blackshots Park, so I class myself as quite a lucky councillor. But whether Lee will be answering this, brought it up at full council. We put a wood on Woodview 3 years ago. We still heard nothing from that motion. So if we're looking at climate change and trying to do something in an area that hasn't got anything that can't be built on, surely it's better to put trees on it. So I don't know whether Sean or Lee want to come in on that one.
Thank you, Chair. I'm aware of the motion from council, so that's been picked up, and obviously we'll be responding to that specific question. But I think just building upon what Irina and what Sean was saying, I think this is a great opportunity, I think, for members and for the community really to look in their wards, look in their areas, and look at really what's valued in that community, and obviously work with the officers to get those sites nominated and work through the plan.
That's lovely. Thanks, Lee. Thanks, Sean. Yeah. Councillor Watson.
Thank you. Sean and Lee, I've also got one on the Beacon at Purfleet to have a designated green space area on behalf of Councillor Holloway, Abbas and myself. Am I expecting exactly the same timetable as what Councillor Kerrin has done it? So we'll be doing exactly the same thing?
Yeah. I mean, basically,
okay.
the idea of going out with another consultation is to sort of regularise the process, because there are a number of councillors who put in submissions, and really we should be giving the community and community groups the same access and support in this process. So, you know, whilst you guys have already submitted, makes perfect sense for us to have a conversation as soon as possible. We will be acting consistently across the piece with everybody else.
Okay, so I expect to hear from you in soon, basically.
As soon as possible.
Christmas, yeah?
Thank you, Sean. Just after Christmas, yes?
Yeah, it'll be a consultation we run on the website. And
Okay.
you know, we will obviously go back directly to the members and sort of start that process.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. Councillor
Thank
Anderson.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a quick question on the sort of way these green sites are being assessed. I noticed on the form, the assessment form that you've handed in, that there's a section on recreational value that the green spaces are sort of scored against, if you like, and it mentions that this could be formal or informal activity. I know a number of green spaces across the borough and, of course, particularly in Corringham and Stamford, that are used regularly for dog walkers, for kids that will go and play football, but there's no sort of way to statistically look at the use of that. You know, it's informal use by kids going over and playing a bit of football, dog walkers. How is that being measured? I don't understand how that can be taken into account.
I think it'll be a mix of sort of quantitative and qualitative assessments. Quantitative in the sense that there may well be a known deficit of open space within those areas. So therefore that would sort of score highly in terms of wanting to retain it. I think qualitatively as well, in terms of whether it's just an open space poorly kept. And I think in those instances, it might be the case that we would look at, well, if you were to improve that park or open space, what are the sort of community needs? And then that would then sort of like, I suppose, lead you to a discussion on whether some, or not all of it, but some of the park could usefully be redeveloped to generate the funds to improve what's there. So again, I think it'll be a matter of judgment and discussion with the local community and members.
I was just going to say, even just to councillors, we've done all ours on Blackshots Field with just funding. You know, we started that about 15 years ago, and we just do it for funding. We don't ask the council for any money, and there's a lot of funding out there that is for you. You know, you can put in it to go to with your forum or whatever. If you just start up a group within your area, you know, and get people to do it. There's a lot of funding out there which can be used to do things like play stuff or, you know, anything on, if you've got a little bit of green belt that you want to, you know, for the kids and for older people, you know, just doing things. So there's a lot of money out there, Sean. So anybody else like to come in? No, sure. We've done it. So hopefully you're going to come back to us after Christmas, Sean. Yes.
Yeah, I mean the consultation.
Feedback to us ever.
Yeah, hopefully the consultation will be live in January, and then we'll come back to you after that's closed at the end of February and let you know what sites have been submitted, and we'll firm up the process and the timings for meeting with the community groups. I should also say that we have an officer who could be dedicated to helping those groups in terms of looking at future potential of those parks and open spaces as to what might be achieved if we were to be slightly more interventionist in terms of.
Can you name the officer, Sean?
It'll be one of our principal landscape officers who's got experience in this sort of work.
Okay. If no one's got any questions, Irina, I'm sorry to have gone through that quickly with you, but we do appreciate it, you know, and we have read it, we have looked at it, and hopefully when Sean comes back to us, we hope you'll come along to the next one and listen to us. We might have some more questions for you then. Everybody happy with that?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Thank you all. Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Sean. And thank you, Irina. Thank you very much. Cheers. Are you going to stay with us or are you going to go?
I'm here.
Okay. Are you going, Lee? Are you going or are you staying?
No, Joy. I'm here till the end.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Sean, are you staying with us?
Yeah, I'm staying to the end as well.
Okay. Okay, lovely. Okay, item 7. Model of housing. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And remember, we can read.
I know you can read. I'm well versed in what members can read it from Housing Open Scrutiny.
Yes,
as part
thank
of
you.
introduction, there's members who won't have met me. I'm Ryan Farmer. I'm the Housing Strategy Manager. I'm not proposing to go through the report in any great detail, but this was a report that was requested at a previous local development plan task force. Whilst I wasn't there in attendance, I tried to gather what I could watching back the recording, and hopefully I've done what I can to meet the questions. So really, it's over to you to ask any questions that you've got from this report as best as I can from a housing perspective, and if not, hopefully colleagues from planning, if it's a planning matter, might be able to give their views as well.
Okay. Does anybody want? Councillor Kerrin.
Thank you. So yeah, obviously I've read it in advance. I've prepared my questions, but only two really to begin with, and then hopefully, and obviously it gives people a chance. In terms of affordability, obviously we keep saying this all the time, but affordable is only affordable if you can afford it.
Yeah.
And obviously you've set out, you know, the criteria, the 80% of median market rent, but does the council have any agency in setting sort of affordability more towards local criteria?
So there's two things here. You have what is you have affordability as a concept, and you have affordable rent there, which is a specific product. Affordable rent is generally accepted to be that 80% of market rent. But what is affordable in Thurrock, and what we could locally class as affordability, is different to that, really. And it's more than just your household like housing costs. It's what it costs to run your house, what it costs to get to work, and all the other household expenditure that should be taken into affordability. So that specific point there, 3.3, is around a specific product, and that is what that's benchmarked at. Now, as a council, in our own stock, we have the agency. It's our you know, it's our development. At the same time, it needs to be financially viable. It's not just about providing the homes. We need to make sure that we can afford to maintain them going forward and that type of thing. So really, the answer to your question is affordable rent is a specific product, but affordability is far, far broader. And there's a wider piece of work that we're doing with colleagues in public health about this.
Okay, one last one, because I see we're going to be kicked out.
Sorry, we've got time, we're all right. So last one.
In terms of models of housing, I've mentioned this a sort of few times in meetings. I know that Lee Nicholson's on there. He'll know from, you know, the amount of times I've raised this as well. In terms of housing, what sort of work is done in terms of the type of housing needed for how Thurrock is developing over the next 10, 20, 30 years? I'm thinking about the transport document we had before, and in terms of, you know, what kind of people we're expecting to be in Thurrock, in terms of, you know, Councillor Collins mentioned before that from many years ago, the Barter estate, that was designed for families of shoe workers, you know, so with the ports expanding in terms of the 32,000 homes, are we looking for housing that's for sort of younger families, or is Thurrock going to be ageing? So is it housing more for older people? You know, so what work is being done on demographics, income types, and what we're projecting to be coming into Thurrock?
Very, very good questions. And Sean, if you don't mind,
Sean will be aware of the amount of times I've mentioned this as well.
a little closer, perhaps, to strategic housing market assessments,
Sean,
and the such like.
Yeah, I knew this question was going to come up tonight. I mean, I think stuff like what I've been saying over the years and been consistent is that we are awaiting the production of the South Essex Strategic Housing Market Assessment, which is the SHMA. We had a draft come through today from the consultants, and that they've been looking at the sort of the specialist and affordable housing side of the equation. I haven't read it, but the idea is that we will get this published early in the new year. The thing that is slightly holding us back, Martin, is that we're still waiting for the government to agree to what it wants to do with the standard method. Obviously, there's been quite a lot of backlash, and Michael Gove has been given the role of reviewing it and coming up with a new approach. The government has dropped some hints in terms of levelling up and maybe looking to direct greater housing growth to the north. We don't know what that means to the south, but there are sort of rumours that those areas where they are likely to be significant employment growth should be the areas that should be identified for additional housing beyond base. So I think when the government makes its intentions clear, we will be given some guidance on how we go forward. And it won't be, I don't think, a binding top-down figure, which was what we had under the standard method. It'll be left to local authorities to perhaps come up with their own figure based on criteria and guidance, which is effectively what we had before in 2017 when we produced the previous SMART.
Do you think, Chair, we could have, I know we're going to wait for Michael Gove, but do you think in the interim, as Sean's just said, that the thing arrived today, and I just wonder if we could, again, the meeting maybe before the end of this, not academic year, sorry, municipal year, we could maybe talk about the SMAR and, you know, even while we're waiting for more from central government, we could really.
Yeah, I don't see when we look at the work programme, perhaps bring that up.
Yeah,
and we'll get.
So I appreciate Sean can't say too much more to me because it only arrived today. And, but you know, once he's read it and sort of looked at it, maybe we could have a report on it.
Yeah.
You know.
Sean, how much are residents informed of all this that we've got in front of us? You know, not all residents listen to this.
No, I thought they all tuned in.
No, don't tune in. It's not good enough. No adverts on the thing.
Yeah.
How much do we actually try and get out there to our tenants, and you know, how much information do we give them? Because on page 103 it mentions the 95% mortgages, but a 95% mortgage is still going to be a lot of deposit for youngsters who can't afford it. I mean, I'm a great one for bringing 100% mortgage back because it did happen. You know, whether it was 15, 20 years ago, it did happen.
Yeah.
And that would give people more of a chance to actually take some ownership of the property they live in. I just wondered how much that's gone out to residents.
It's probably better if I defer to Ryan on this. But I mean, what I would say, just come back, this is revenge, isn't it? But what I would say, come back to the earlier point that Martin made, is that if we viewed as being helpful, we could get Turleys, who are the consultants preparing the SMAR, to actually come to the next meeting and give a presentation.
Yeah. That's good. He's already said it then, hasn't he? He's already said it.
Answered it for
Thank you, John.
Thank you, Chair. I'm aware of other people. So
yeah, no, it's good. Okay, Councillor Watson.
Thank you. So this is going to be aimed more at your work because you're the housing strategy. So in terms of housing strategy, what we should be doing in the borough is looking at what our residents need, not what the development wants to give us.
Yes.
So in that case, at the moment I sit on planning and I just get slightly frustrated that I see a lot of 4 beds coming through constantly. But I don't think that's necessarily what Thurrock needs. So in terms of that, have you got an overarching view you can just give us sitting here in terms of how much on our waiting list or how much overall on the long term of looking at your housing strategy over how many years?
So the housing strategy is a 5-year document.
5 years, over the next 5 years, bearing in mind our population grows, so I don't expect numbers, but what is the forecast of how many 1-bedrooms do we need, and 2 and 3, and do we actually need 4 beds? Is there actually these massive large families out there that actually need these 4 beds?
So housing need is a tricky subject. Everyone has a housing need. If I look at our housing waiting list, it's a cohort of people with very specific housing needs. And if I look at that group, then really our biggest need are 2 beds, then 1 beds, then probably 4 and 5s, then 3 beds. And there is a need for 4 and 5s because families are growing larger and larger, and actually it's very difficult for people to go and find their own accommodation. Now, the reason I said everyone has a housing need is because those larger properties that developers are coming in to build are still being sold and still being lived in. Yeah. And whether that's people who have a housing need to come to Thurrock to work or are already living in Thurrock who need to upsize. My in-laws, bless them, over the road are 3 adults in a 3-bedroom house, and it's, you know, it's manageable, but they could do with a bit more space, and sometimes that space is only with an extra bedroom. So it's tricky. If we were talking just about, you know, social housing and affordable housing, we work with our development team, who work closely with social housing providers that are coming into Thurrock, and regularly we update to say the proportion of households that need X many bedrooms. But that's again not to say that we don't need some of those large properties. My own personal view, it would be much nicer if we could have more of those smaller size properties, because that's what our housing waiting list looks like it needs.
Yeah.
But that's again not to say that the housing need isn't there for those other property sizes.
So that, sorry, Chair, is that okay? So for us, our waiting list is getting bigger. It's not really getting smaller. And in terms of LHA or social housing, the stock is diminishing. It's not getting bigger because of the right to buys. So now, is there a way that we can, I know Councillor Spillman says he's going to build all these like social housing. It's going to be absolutely fantastic, but until I actually see a model and where that's being funded from, then I will believe that. But to be honest, but from a pure housing strategy point of view, as councillors, and we all have different demography and demographics sitting in each and every ward, we've all got our deprivation part as well as our like really nice parts. But what do we actually need? And is there a way that we can enhance planning on that, Sean and Lee, and try and get developers, instead of, you're right, we do need 4 or 5, but we don't need 12 or 15 4-bed houses. You know, could it be more of a mix for what we need as like for our residents?
So from me, if I talk, it's the difficult when you're not in the same room. If I talk from an increase in social affordable housing from that side, the way to do that is that we build more, or we attract other social housing providers to come to Thurrock and build more, or those that are already here, we encourage them to increase their stock. That's how we increase that size, and how you counteract the right to buy sales, because like it or not, it's policy, and right to buy looks like it's here to stay for a little bit longer.
No, you're housing association different. Like, so I can't go back on that. Right to buy is different for different products. So if you're a housing association,
Can't buy.
Your right to buy is 7,000. If you're in a social housing like council, it's 100,000 or 70%, whatever's the most. So there's different. So if we're going to encourage more for the local, like for housing associations, as long as we, in a nice way, like manage them properly to ensure that their areas are nice and maintained, and the repairs are being done, and the landscaping is being done, you know, you're less of a chance of somebody actually buying a local housing than a housing association than a council house.
It's yes, in that type of property, if it's affordable rent, then you're looking at right to acquire rather than right to buy. But the other side of that is that there are more options for the types of properties that social housing provider might bring in. So whether that's the government's new first homes, which is going to be their sort of flagship, they'd like 25% of all their properties to be that, whether that's shared ownership, and again, that's not properties in that social pool. So it's tricky. It's a very tricky thing.
Never said it was easy.
No.
None of us
none of
ever
it's
said
easy.
it was easy.
Absolutely.
I would say that sitting around this table here, and the council can say now that most of our casework will be on properties in disrepair and damp.
We've got a meeting with mayors soon, so that'll be good.
That's most of our casework, isn't it?
I think we've also, you know, Ryan, I bring it up all the time. We need bungalows as well. You know, that is a necessity to free up the bigger homes, the 3 and 4 bedrooms. You know, if we're talking about council, we need those bungalows, and we need them built in a nicer way as well. We need people don't always want the same, you know, property to be the same all the time. You know, it needs to come through. I think there's other properties we need, but Councillor Watson's right. You know, we have to move on, and we need to see some change in the way it's done. Councillor Tanby.
Yeah.
Sorry, I think Lee was going to come in on
Lee,
that. Sorry,
I can't be both ways. Sorry.
No, that's fine. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
I think the moment may have passed, but it was just coming in a moment ago, just to talk about, I guess, the sequence of where I'm hearing this. I think Absolutely. This report's really, really helpful as it sets a bit of a baseline, as it were, and it talks about the different types, etc., and where we are right now. I think from here we need to springboard into the conversation with Turley's, look at the strategic housing market assessment work. There needs to be a bit of a conversation and debate, which then leads into the drafting of the local plan policies, housing policies, which will go into Reg 18 out for consultation. Once we have our local plan in place, then those will be the policies that then start to influence the development. And of course, when the planning application comes in, when we have our percentage of affordable housing, the team would then consult with Ryan's colleagues, and then they would be looking at the actual needs at that time in that location, with looking at the housing strategy as well. And that's kind of holistically how all this sort of stuff just ties together quite neatly. But tonight is really, I think, probably the beginning of a new conversation about housing, what the typology is going to be, what the properties, 10 years, what they look like, what they feel like, because we know we're going to need a huge range of different products to meet our housing numbers, and one size just won't fit all. So we will need to have that variation.
Thanks, Lee.
Can I just, Lee, just if to keep you in there, I hope that councillors are looking at the planning that comes through and watching the HMOs coming through, because they are quite integral to what's happening, because we stopped one a little while ago of 9 houses in one street being used as an HMO, and that was stopped. I think that was informed Councillor Rice, and that was stopped.
What's that? Where was that?
In Chapel.
Yeah, because I've got something coming through on planning.
Yeah, I think if you watch your planning coming through, you will see the HMOs and what. To make sure you sort of watch the planning coming through on your ward, and you'll see, and then you can pull them in, because you need to pull them out, because they're not always good, and I think a lot of councillors don't understand what it means to have HMOs in houses. You're talking a occupation of 9 and 10. I think one that's trying to go through is 13. So I think we have to watch them. Because people are coming from, whether they're coming from London or not, is they're buying up property and then putting them as an HMO, and they're not always licensing them. So I think we've got to watch. Do you agree with that, Lee? Or I think we've just got to watch what's coming through as an HMO.
As I say, there's a range. There will be a range of products, and HMOs are one of them. But obviously, where applications come in, obviously they will be considered in the round. But I think where we're coming from right now is just more of that strategic approach, and how, because we know that we're going to be looking at a fair amount of growth and changing borough. And we just want to make sure that those changes are for the best and for the positive, and we're doing the legwork right now to make that work.
Yeah, I think councillors have also got to understand that 9 in one road is wrong, because you have the ability to call them in.
It's like a block of flats.
Yes, so you can call them in. So
you don't always win.
Pardon?
You don't always win.
We've won on quite a few of them. You've got to be really strong with them, and say that you don't want them in that, and then get your residents on board. So I think you've got quite a lot of clout.
If they want 5 and above, they've got to apply for a licence, don't they?
Yes, and a lot of them don't still. No, they don't. So okay, anybody else got any questions? That's it, Andy.
Right, okay. Going to strategic as well.
Of course.
Obviously affordable, and you're saying the demand is for 1 and 2 bedrooms, which you said in your stats. That's what we need. 1 and 2 bedroom is the only way someone who's young leaving a house, or a first time buyer, is going to buy a house.
Yeah.
So what's the point of building 4 bedroom houses? You're going to get someone out the borough who's going to get top money from a house in London, come straight here, take it. And then the youngster, whoever wants to buy the first time buyer, even in this borough, ain't got a chance. Yeah. So for me to listen to this in your strategic plan makes no sense.
This is where, I'll refer back to that point about housing need. We absolutely do need to have more genuinely affordable accommodation. We know that the types of households that need those accommodation tend to be 1 and 2 bedrooms. Now, it's also worth saying that people on our housing register are on there for other reasons beyond just affordability. There is more than just that. But we do still need the larger property size, because there are still families like that. And whilst it is a fact that people will be moving to Thurrock elsewhere, it's also that is still a positive thing for the borough to have people choosing to come and live in Thurrock and pay their council tax here and all those other considerations. So the housing strategy and the local plan will both set out, you know, quite broad aspirations. The housing strategy is about more than just social housing. It is private rental sector. HMOs are coming up everywhere as a topic, I should say. HMOs are coming up as a topic, everyone's talking. And it's the same with owner-occupied properties. And people in Thurrock who are already in the housing market, they may be looking for something larger. So it's, although it is, we know we need the smaller properties and the more affordable properties, we still do need to cater for those other people who have that other needs. So I don't think any one of those can be done in isolation. I do think we do need to consider all of those things, because otherwise there will be some unhappy residents who the only way to get a large property is to move to Southend or Basildon or Brentwood or somewhere else.
Sorry, is there an end of line for the 5% deposit first time buyer, or there's no?
That has only just come back. That particular scheme. So it's in the hands of government if they decide to stop, or in the hands of the lenders if they decide to stop. But it's only just been reintroduced, so it probably will have some legs for a little while, I would say. But no published timescale that I'm aware of.
Right, okay.
I mean, sometimes with bigger properties as well, it'd be the families will have their parents to live with them.
Yeah.
Because I think that's happening a lot,
Yeah.
because of social care is costing so much. And not everybody's got dementia and everything like that. You can't really help those sort of things. But I think a lot of people have parents to live with them now, so they're looking at places with an annex on the side, you know. So it's that sort of thing does come through. But I take your point. You know, I think we've got to look at other bits. Councillor Anderson, did you want to? I can't see you up there.
Thank you, Chair.
You all right?
Councillor Collins
Colin?
did.
You don't want to ask me, do you?
Your turn.
Thank you. Just a quick
Floor's
question.
yours.
We keep seeing sort of affordable houses, and then we hear about high density housing, basically flats, which we don't want in Thurrock. Really, the sort of affordable housing and all the housing we're talking about, whether it's 1 or 2 bedrooms or 4 bedrooms, we need to have gardens. I think we all agree with that, because after our experience with COVID, being shut up in a flat is not doing such a requirement, and it's inhuman. Is our gardens an integral part of these houses that we're talking about?
Definitely.
So I'll talk more broadly on the housing strategy with that particular point. We know, we've seen from the last 2 years how important good quality housing and green spaces to people and their well-being and their health in general. What we're currently doing in the consultation and the engagement for the housing strategy, and it's ongoing, we've still got another 6 weeks or so, and hopefully soon as members you'll get an email from me with a link to our online page, so you can come and give your views directly through that, as well as through this forum. But we're asking people about what matters to them. It's probably a fair assumption that people are going to say access to gardens, and I do think also we need to think about the way homes are used in general. It's more than just the outside space, but how much space there is inside. And what
it's also becoming a workspace. A lot of people are working from home.
Yeah.
Exactly that.
Yeah.
I was coming to that.
Yeah.
They've been workspaces, they've been gyms, they've been classrooms, and that's probably going to that could be the way it is again in the future. So I think the way that we view home needs a bit of a shift, rather than just be a place that you live and sleep in. It's a place that should keep you well. And I'd really be interested to hear your views on that consultation when I send it around. So I don't have an answer, but hopefully we'll get to an
Just
answer.
like the 19th century again, where the weavers used to weave upstairs and then come down and look after the kids.
Instead of sitting at the dining room table.
He was there. He was there.
Yeah.
I think we've got to look at, because obviously I'm in the process of with Blackshots. You know, we know that have got to come down, and hopefully they'll come down. But the process of planning is very important. You know, as councillors, we need to pull things in that we're not happy about. We need to speak at planning more. I think actually listening to planning lately, we've got a very strong planning councillors on there now, and listening to it the other night, I think that they're asking questions, because I think we don't need any more high story 20 blocks anymore. You know,
in
and
the first place.
yeah, and it's down to planning.
Yes.
You know, you have to, if you've got it in your ward, you have to pull it in, and you have to bring it to planning, and you hope planning is, I'm not telling you how to be on planning. I've spent 10 years on planning, so I know exactly what you do. But I think you've got to, it's down to councillors to really fight for what they don't want in the borough. You know, if we're taking down 3 blocks that have been up since 1959 and are not fit for purpose, and all the antisocial that goes on in those flats, then we shouldn't be doing it again. You know, we know it gets a lot of people, and we can't have a lot of tract on what local sort of developers come in and want to do, but it's down to planning. You know, if planning says no, means no, and we don't want it in this area. So, you know, did you want to speak?
Thank you. I'm not over. I've known developments in London that are being low-rise flat complex with their own communal garden in the middle with a gym that sits underneath. Hackney's one, Buckingham's another, Westminster is, and they were a bubble. Just those flats were a bubble through the whole of COVID, and it worked absolutely fine. So it's not like I'm saying, or I can't talk with my colleagues saying, we just want all houses, because we know that's not doable with the land we've got and the amount of people coming through. And that's why we're in a position where the local plan is 30,000 homes, they're saying. But I think there's a way that it could be sensitively done and take into consideration all age groups, from the young who wants their first bed to those that are in their 70s and say, I can't do this anymore, I want to downsize to a bungalow.
It's not there.
You know,
it's not there.
And it's not there. The other thing as well, the issue I think is going to happen if we don't move quite quickly on some development and social housing development, is you're going to have the flats like in Council Redstone ward, where they're going to decant to. So then she's going to end up...
Same area.
Yeah, but they've got nowhere to go.
No, we have to decant. We have to decant.
Exactly.
But, yeah.
So where are they going to decant in order to bring that down to build the development?
Well, it's up to housing.
And then to do, but this is what I'm
that's
saying.
on me. Well,
it's
not
up
me,
to
but
housing.
Yeah.
But we're on a brick wall at the moment.
I mean,
and we need to move forward on that quite quickly.
I would say, I mean, in recent years, the first point you made about flatted developments and the way that they can be done a little bit more holistically about how the community is looking at the developments we have built recently and the ones that's ongoing. I would like to think that we set a bit of a standard for that. So the development at Beaconsfield Place in Calcutta Road at the moment has a podium garden. It has an outside gym. It's been designed with space as a key factor. The Claudian Way development where we have bungalows.
Beautiful.
And I mean, I was there when it was being built.
We should be doing more of that.
Even Alma Court had the playground behind it was renewed because we recognise the value of space and having the things around your home.
I think good consultation with that one as well, because it's in my ward.
Of course, just round the corner.
Yeah.
So I think that we try, and where we have control, we absolutely try to do things. I think we encourage others to try and do the same. Your second point, I've got caught up in Alma Court now. I can't remember what it was.
You want to Alma Court now completely, about becoming a brick wall, about the fact of you need to decant. So you need to decant to pull down, like the Black Shops development needs to be pulling down. So you're going to have to CPO and decant the social residents out of there.
So again, coming back to Beaconsfield Place, the majority of people who are moving into there are moving from the Alexandra Court Shelter housing complex, which is being decanted to be redeveloped in the future to more appropriate housing for the need at that time. We are developing experience in that. We absolutely know that anyone who moves from Backshots, if that happen, will need to have somewhere to go. We have a responsibility to do that, and we will have an appropriate plan in place. I don't know what that plan looks like right now, but we recognise you can't move someone to nowhere. It's going to have to happen. The CPO and the leasehold side is probably a little bit more complicated, but I trust my colleagues in legal and housing will deal with that. But no, you're right to flag those concerns, but we will deal with that sensitively.
Yeah, you've got compulsory purchase. Not many, because I think there's about 5 that are owned. There's not many in the Blackshots flats, and I think that we decant. It means they'll get the offer to come back to that area if they want to. It might be they decant and are quite happy where they would go. But I think we've got to look at that. But the consultation came back very positive. You know, we knew it'd come back like that, but that was good. You know,
We've set a good standard with
We have.
how we've dealt with Beaconsfield Place, Alexandra Court decommissioning. You know, very, very vulnerable residents at times, and they're moving from a place that they've been quite happily living for quite some time. And we've had some positive feedback on that. So we'll take that learning, move it forward, and make sure that all those people in Black Shots.
I mean, if we look
if
at
that
Chadwell and we think there's
The local
50 there, you could do 3 lots of 50, but you get a better. Those flats are absolutely beautiful. They must think they've died and gone to heaven, because that is beautiful. You know, the balconies and they've actually got a nice place to live and look out on. You know, so I think it does matter. And Black Shots have got the ideal place to do it, because it can look out over wherever they build. It can look out over there. So I think there's a lot. We've got a lot of good things coming to Thurrock.
How many flats is there?
168 in all. Yeah. But as I said, about 5 of them might be a compulsory purchase order, you know, on there. So we'll have to pay out for those who want to move on. But no, there could be 3 lots of 50 done up there in a much better way. You know, I think, and residents are quite happy for them to come down as well. So
I'm totally all for it. You know, I just want a building programme
move forward,
accelerate
forward,
and not just come to planning. When every time I look at it, it's like 10 on job, so jobs and stuff.
So it's taken Councillor Maney and I 10 years to get to where we are now, so we're not doing bad.
Do you feel it's pushing on, being on the housing strategy? How do you feel yourself?
I do. I do think that it's been really positive to see some new homes being provided. And I would say within the service, there is a real commitment to want to do more of that. It's what we're in fairness, it's what we're in the business to do, provide homes for people.
Can I just ask one thing? On all developments, so 35% affordables, Lee might know this, is that allocated directly to the council in order for them to do the nomination rights, or is that just anybody can move in? Because if so, why can't we? Why can't we say it has to be 35% and it has to go back to the council for the nomination rights?
So it depends on, one, if the 35% is actually achieved. The second thing it depends on is what that affordable housing is provided as, whether it's provided as shared ownership or affordable rent or some other affordable housing product that's available at that point in time. If it's offered as affordable rent by a housing association, then yes, we get the nomination rights to those. We don't own the properties, we don't manage them, but they will take their applicants from our housing waiting list. So we advertise it and they get the applicants that way. If it's shared ownership, then there is a regional register. People need to have a local connection, they can do it that way. In honesty, I don't think as an authority we would necessarily want to take over ownership or management of any of those particular properties that are built by a developer. One of the things that we do like about building our own properties is we know what's gone into them and we know what the maintenance of those properties are going to be like. But that's not to say that there would be any issues, but that's why we probably step away from that. But yeah, if it's an affordable rent, we get the nomination rights, or if it's affordable housing, there is generally some form of local connection to that, even if it's not for us as an authority.
Only got the work programme. That's all right. Okay, has anybody got any more questions? We all right? We done?
We've
Okay.
got climate change still there.
Have we still got climate change? I thought we done that.
The
Okay.
next one.
Lee, did you want to come in quick on anything that's just been said? Are you all right?
No, nothing for me, thank you, Chair.
Okay. Okay, Sean, are you all right?
Chair, we've only got 20 minutes.
Okay.
To do this.
This is Ben.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
Ben and Liz.
Is everybody all right? We move on to climate change then. Okay.
Go.
Okay, quick. Ben. Sorry to keep you waiting. Right.
That's all right. Good
Same
to
as
see
the
you.
others, you know, we
Sorry,
can read it.
everybody.
You know, if you
That's
can
fine.
skip
I'll
as
assume
much
you
as you
have.
can.
Yeah, well, to be honest with you,
Not to rush you, but, you know.
no, I'll go
Okay.
straight to the. I'll go straight to the point, really. As you
Thank
know, we
you.
spoke about this time last year, and we progressed the study now to about the halfway point. We've got to the point where we've got a long list of actions by different sectoral area, and we really sort of paused the work to make sure that we got the right level of buy-in and support for the strategy as it goes forward. So we're looking for feedback in 2 areas really tonight. First of all, in our process that we propose for the consultation, which is on one of the pieces of paper that you've got in front of you there. And one of those sessions is an officer session. So perhaps this might actually count as towards one of the sort of points of consultation. But really the other point is really just your feedback on the types and nature of the actions that we've set out there. So the team have set out a number of actions that they've taken from various different documents that we consider to be, actions that will both reduce greenhouse gas emissions and enhance climate resilience. And so we're really looking for feedback on, as I say, the type and nature of those actions. So I had a presentation to run through, but I'll just leave it at that, to be honest. I know that you've it's late and you've got the documents. I'm sure you've read through them. The key point for us is we want to try to get to the point where we complete the strategy, but we want to do that in a way which is as participatory as possible and gets the most level of sort of buy-in and engagement from the various different stakeholders that need to be brought into the process, such that when the document is ready, you can all sort of accept it and get on straight away to implement. And so, as I say, feedback on the process for consultation and the actions is really what we're looking for tonight. And if it's not tonight, then over the next few weeks.
Okay, thanks, Ben. Thank you for that. Has anybody got any questions? I know Gary will. Flooding.
Too long, actually. It's. I just get a bit annoyed about it because I'm not a great believer in an awful lot of this. The climate's always changing.
Yes.
Being an old git, I was at school when we've been told that we're going to be an ice age by the year 2000. Now we're going to be told that we're going to fry. It's freezing cold outside tonight, ironically. So if we talk about everyone having electric cars, do we have the infrastructure in place to charge them?
No.
And I did ask the electricity generating people how many power stations we have to build in order to accommodate charging. I've been told it's 2 Draxby sized power stations, as I'll be looking to build one of those in Thurrock, Essex.
Power station down.
No? Okay. What are we going to do about the infrastructure in order to charge all these cars, please? Have you got any plans for that?
Yeah, so all of these actions are sort of interconnected, and I know you're looking at infrastructure separately. We will be able to predict or make some estimates of the level of electric cars that might be taken up by that time, and therefore the power demand that they might need, and the impact that would have on the infrastructure. So we can provide some advice on that. But it would probably be taken forward in other strategies, most notably probably the energy strategy that the colleagues of mine are working on with you guys now. So it's a point that's well made. It will be considered, but probably not through this work, more through the energy strategy that goes alongside it. Does that make sense?
I think if everybody bought a electric car now, the grid would never cope.
They couldn't afford it either.
So, and most people can't afford an electric car anyway. So I think it's tied into nowhere. Councillor Kerrin.
Yeah, so Ben, thank you very much for this report. Sorry that it's taken, it's at the end of the meeting. Now, obviously we all want to do something about climate change, but I think sometimes as an individual and as a borough, you can feel really small compared to the rest of the world. When COP26 was happening, and and so our sort of little plot of land in the world scheme of things, Thurrock. What difference do you think enacting this plan could make overall to the world of climate change? Because obviously, as you know, we can't just have a border and say climate change stops at Stamford to the east and West Thurrock to the west. It kind of, we're affected by it almost regardless of what we do. So what difference do you think this could make to overall Thurrock and its contribution to reducing climate change?
Yeah, it's a, the contribution that Thurrock could make would be proportional to the area that you have and the number of people who live there, and also in your case, I think maybe a little bit more than a straight pro rata because of some of the industry that takes place at some of the higher emitting things that happen in the borough. But I would turn your question around in terms of how I would respond to that, because I accept the point that you can feel very small and as an individual or even as a borough in the UK and globally, but actually I think everybody has to be doing something, and that counts for us as individuals in the lifestyle choices that we make, if we can afford to make different choices, but it also in the role of counsellors or consultants or whatever it is we do in our work, we all have to be doing something. So I think I tend to think of it from that way round rather than getting sort of defeated by the scale of the challenge.
Yeah. No, I mean, sorry if you sort of saw my question, and it's not being sceptical or defeatist. I'm just looking for sort of how we can, my children are talking to me about it a lot at the moment, about what we can do as a family, and I think of then what we can do as a borough. Is there a sort of, I'm sorry if it's in here and I didn't notice it, is there a particular target that you'd be happy with for Thurrock in terms of, I don't know, net carbon emissions and things like that? Is there like a standard that perhaps we as a borough could say, we're doing our bit, we've met this target of net tonnage of carbon a year, and this is our contribution to the sort of the bigger world picture?
Yeah, absolutely, and that will come through the strategy. So the UK as a whole is on a trajectory to net zero by 2050. We've plotted the baseline emissions for Thurrock and a pathway to reduce that over time. And so what we will hope to do through the process of this consultation that takes place over the next few months is to agree with you an ambition or a target that we can then wrap into the strategy document that we publish. My expectation is that it would be roughly in line with the UK ambition as a whole, and if anything, slightly more ambitious, because often the local boroughs that we work with, local authorities, or even smaller scale at development scale, you actually potentially have the power to go a bit faster in some areas. So that's how we would tend to do that.
And when you mentioned the target, are we waiting? Do you know when that target would be in for Thurrock, or did you say you were linking it to the UK national target of net zero?
So we've got that would be basically part of the consultation that we go through over the next couple of months. But you can see on in your deck there, you can see in slide 4, I think it is, where the existing baseline emissions are and a trajectory to reduce that. Well, a trajectory that has reduced up to now, and then going forward up to 2037. So you can see, with the Tyndall Centre pathway, where we are on business as usual, and then where we are if we align to the national ambition. So we'd be looking to set a target with you in consultation that sort of fits somewhere within that.
Thank you.
I mean, Ben, it's good to see on. It's in very small print. Some of it is in too small a print, although I don't need glasses to read, but it's really, in small print. But I noticed we've got on the transport one, convenience of bus routes. This could also include eco-friendly river buses. I would rather have been in there. This will include, because we're so far ahead of that. I'd rather see that this will happen, not it could.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Absolutely, Councillor Redstall, and look, that's the sort of feedback we're looking for. We can make those changes, of course, and then it comes across as a more ambitious document. So, absolutely.
Councillor Watson.
Thank you for this. Some of the stuff on here around the building and land use, we're going through so much development at the moment in planning, big developments, social housing going at the end of the block over there. I'm unsure why we can't start to implement some of these now in the planning regime. And also, I'm sorry, Chair, really interested to know about district heat. How many existing district heat networks do we currently have? And when are you looking at replacing them? So we've got no existing heats, and yet it's in here.
If I'm honest with you,
it works.
Okay.
Sorry, you're saying it's in. Say again. Sorry.
It's on your listing, shortlisted actions. Existing district heat network must switch to low carbon, but Councillor Redstall said we haven't got any existing heat.
Don't know of anyone.
Have we got any? Can anybody tell me?
I to be honest with you, yeah, I'm not going to answer that question categorically, right or wrong. But I'm pretty sure you would have some.
Sean?
Oh, sorry.
You're on mute.
Sean, you're on mute.
You're on mute.
Thank you.
£10 for the team. I don't think we have any at this moment in time, but we do have proposals coming forward, people who've got the ability to provide district heating systems for the benefit of some of the new developments that might come forward, as well as existing communities. So that is something that's actually happening as we speak.
So we haven't got any, so we can take that out, but we will be having some. Because there's another one in here. So.
Yeah, we have emerging proposals.
Yeah, we have some colleagues, as I said earlier, who are working on the energy strategy, so we can make sure that the action wording aligns with their reporting too. But even to be honest, if there's no existing, we can still advocate and promote for low carbon or renewable district heating networks going forward, which is what we would look to do in new developments, as you pointed to, where they are happening on strategic sites. That would be the type of thing that you'd want to promote.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thank you.
I mean, a lot on there, Ben, is about water efficiency as well, and I think on planning, water authority don't come very often.
No, they don't come at all.
No, so I think that needs to be brought up, Lee. I think there needs to be more from the water, especially in what we're in at the moment with building on wetlands and fenlands, and I think that needs to come forward. I think we've got to bring that forward because, as I said, we perhaps need a reservoir or we need something in the borough. We've never done that. We've got so much housing, and water and sewerage must be at its biggest level, I would think.
Yeah,
so
we're using 1960s and 1970s drainage for a 2020 population.
Yeah. So I think we need to
point out as well, people seem to forget, is that the southeast is sinking.
Yes.
The northwest of the British Isles is rising. The southeast is sinking.
It's got too much.
Glacial rebound or whatever, hydrostatic, whatever it is. I was always told it was glacial rebound.
I think
so we're building in an area which is actually sinking.
I don't really think we've had long enough on this because I think there's things that we really need to. So when we do the work programme minute on the quick, Ben, I think it's something that we can probably come back to you with a few more questions.
And put it earlier in the year.
And put it, definitely bring it up early in the year.
Yeah, well, that's fine. And I didn't want to, recognising we're really late, I didn't want to force it tonight. But I think the things that we're really keen to get your views on are, as I said before, the process. So we basically paused our work because we want to make sure that what we recommend is accepted and bought into by you guys. So we've put in one of the slides here, a process for engaging through semi-structured interviews with different stakeholders, through officer workshops, member workshops, business engagement. So we really want your feedback to make sure that's appropriate and you're okay with that.
No, I think we're going to talk on the work programme minute, Ben. So we might just got a question from Councillor Anderson, and then we're.
Okay, no worries.
Thank you for the update. I'm really not a fan of compulsion and requiring things of people taking away choice. So I'm not a massive fan of the banning of petrol vehicles that the government, etc. So my quick question is just, is there anything in here Thurrock specific that we as a council are looking to require of people in any way? Is there anything we're looking to do that would take away choice in any way? I know nationally we have, like I mentioned, the government's ideas, but locally as a council, are we looking to do anything that would in any way take choice away from people or require action of them?
Yeah, I understand the question. I think the simplest way to answer that is that we try to distill these actions from existing commitments that exist already nationally or within your own strategies in Thurrock. So they're a sort of distillation, they're sort of they're following a sort of journey that you're already on, direction of travel that you're already on. So I don't think we've invented new things that we're going to require of people that are not required already through existing legislation. We might be looking to up the ambition in some areas, and I guess the exception to that would be where planning is, but obviously, you're acquiring planning through new developments to meet certain requirements anyway. So I'll reflect a little bit on your question after this evening when I go back through the list, but I don't think we're sort of asking anyone to do anything that then they wouldn't be kind of needing to do anyway, if you see what I mean.
Okay. You happy with that? Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Ben. Thanks, Sean.
Thank you.
Lee, thank you very much. I just want to ask that perhaps on planning that we try to get the Water Authority to attend in some cases. Okay. That's something planning can do anyway. Work programme, Grace?
I wrote down what members wanted to add to the
Lovely,
work programme
good.
already.
Okay.
Thank you.
And
Have we put down the climate change again for
did you want that
questions?
to come back in
Yeah,
January?
I think we've
it'll
got so many
be-
questions. I think
It could be a deferred, basically a continuation of this
This
current
one.
presentation in
yeah.
January.
Are you happy with that, Ben? For that to come back? You know,
Yeah,
to
sure,
ask more
sure.
questions? Okay, thank you.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, is it possible you could send us questions in advance? Will you be getting the questions in advance, or will it be on the
No,
night?
you answer them on the foot.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, sorry. I didn't mean that nastily, Ben. I just
No,
want
no,
to put
it's
you on
fine.
the, you've got the knowledge. I'm sure you have most of it. But if
Yeah,
it's
I think we
something
can do
really
that.
specific, then we will send it to you. We'll get in touch with Grace and we'll try and get you something out. Anybody else want anything to be brought up? I think it's been a good discussion actually tonight. Really good. Yeah.
So can I just ask, you know, on the next one on the 24th of January, if we just stick to the climate change of flooding and drainage, because I think that's going to be quite a meaty subject.
Yeah.
The flood.
Yeah, it could come in together, couldn't it, really? Yeah. Yeah.
We could do that.
Yeah, I think that. Thank you, Gary.
That's what I meant. It's going to be.
Cheers, Kevin.
It's Councillor Watson, let me know.
Okay.
Sean's
Can
got
we
his
put that
hand
on?
up still.
Yeah.
Sean's got his hand up.
Sean?
Yeah, it's sort of just building on what you guys have just been talking about. I mean, Essex and Suffolk Water came to see us a couple of weeks ago, and they basically would like the opportunity to talk more about their plans for the next 20, 30 years. So I think we can get that one arranged in the next meeting. The other thing I think would be useful to do is we are about to commission further work in terms of flood risk. And I know there's a lot of discussion about developments and how that might impact upon flows, water flows across the borough. So we could again aim to get our consultants, AirCom, to come along and do a presentation on the work they're going to be doing for the local plan, if that was felt to be helpful.
Perhaps that'd be good on a March one, Sean, to get Essex and Suffolk Water or whatever to come to, or on the screen or whatever, just so we can ask a few questions. Yeah, they're pretty happy with that? Yeah. Okay, Grace?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Has anybody got anything they want to say here? No? On screen? Anybody?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's been a very good meeting, I think.
Yeah.
In my respect, it has.
Yeah.
That's really good. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Ben. And thank you, Irina. Thank you very much. Good night. Thank you. Thanks, Grace. Just in time.
I know.
Just by the skin of our teeth.
There's a song there, isn't there, somewhere?